I love the look of these wooden beaded trays, and I've wanted to have one in my home decor, but they always come with a really high price tag. I have seen them at Hobby Lobby and at stores online from anywhere from about $50 upwards to $80 or $90. So I decided to try to make a tray inspired by this high-end look for a lot less. And today I'm doing it using Dollar Tree supplies. For this project, you'll need 2 frames. I chose one that fits within the other, a square and a rectangle, and the frames I chose also have a channel around the edge. I did buy these very recently. Then you'll need some wooden beads. I got mine from Amazon. It's a much better deal than anything else I've found. And then also 2 glass candlesticks from the Dollar Tree. The first thing I did was to open up the frames and then give both the frame and the glass a coat of chalk paint. I used Art Minds chalk paint. I got it at Michael's several weeks ago, but you could use any chalk paint that you have. Acrylic paint might also work. I'm not really sure, but anytime I'm painting on glass, I usually use chalk paint or spray paint. Now, I was doing my project at night, and that's why I did not choose to use spray paint, but I'm sure the Rust-Oleum 2X would go on really well as well. I wound up doing 2 full coats, so I made sure that they dried in between the coats, and then I flipped the frames over and I painted the back as well. And you'll see here in the next clip, I did remove the picture frame stand from the back of the one picture frame. The other one did not have that because it was made as a piece of wall decor. So it actually had a sawtooth hanger on it, and I also removed that. And while the chalk paint was drying, I went ahead and glued the candlesticks together end to end because that was going to be the center post of my 2-tiered tray. I used both E6000 and hot glue because E6000 gives that permanent hold, and the hot glue holds it together while the E6000 is drying. The E6000 does take a while to dry, so just be aware this is not a quick project. You're going to need some dry time. And I used my crafting rag to wipe away any excess glue that had kind of squeezed out the side. Now it's permanent glue. It will not come off that rag, so just keep that in mind. Once the chalk paint was dry on both of the trays, I used my hot glue to attach the wooden beads into that channel that I mentioned. The channel is key because it gives the illusion that the beads are kind of built into the wood, just like on the inspiration piece. And the hot glue was ideal for this. You get a really good hold on wood to hot glue. That's why I didn't need to use E6000 for this step. For my 2 trays, it wound up taking about 120 beads. That's about a third of the package that I buy on Amazon. I will put a link for those Amazon beads down below. I'm not affiliated. I don't know how to do that. I haven't done that yet, but I will give you the link so that you can see what I bought. Now, these are created as beads, so they do have a hole in them. So when I was putting them on, I kind of put them hole to hole, which is fine until you get to the end. You can see the hole, but that's okay. We will fill that later and you won't be able to tell at all. And once all of the beads were attached to the tray, I flipped it over and I used 4 larger beads. The package from Amazon comes with 2 sizes, so I used 4 of the larger beads as feet for my tray. And off camera, I did also give the bottom of this tray another coat of paint because I wasn't satisfied with that first coat. Then once all of the beads were attached, I got a brush. This is a larger brush. And I actually dry brushed the beads with some white paint. So the way you dry brush is you kind of dip your brush in the paint and then you kind of blot most of the paint off. And then you take your very dry brush, thus the name, and you paint whatever it is that you're trying to paint. So this just gets a little bit of paint onto the beads. And I made sure to go back I didn't want it to look like I just kind of ran my brush across the top. I did want it to look like the beads were kind of completely dry brushed. So I just made sure I got some paint in all of the crevices so that it had kind of an even look to it. Now, if I had wanted the beads completely painted, I might have painted them before I glued them down, but I knew I was going to be doing this dry brush technique, so I wanted to do it afterwards. And here's a close-up shot so you can kind of see what the dry brushed beads look like. And then I used the same technique on the feet. And here I wanted to show you what the unpainted beads look like so you can kind of see the comparison. Makes it easier to see what the dry brushing does. Then I went ahead and I used the same technique on the smaller tray for the top layer. I used this dry brush technique because it gives that whitewash effect that a lot of the inspiration trays that I saw had. And here's what the smaller square tray looked like when it was done, but it still had those bead holes that we talked about earlier. So I took my spackle, and this you can get at the Dollar Tree. I think I got mine at Ace Hardware. It's just something we had in our garage. And originally I was going to use a popsicle stick to try to get it to go into the holes. That didn't work super well, and I wound up just using my finger. I think I've seen Heidi Sonbol from Heidi Sonbol DIY use her finger, and that's where I got the idea from. I did wind up breaking a piece off of my popsicle stick, and I kind of used it as like a mini putty knife because sometimes my finger got putty where I didn't want it to be, and I kind of had to get it out of the crevices. So that worked pretty well. Of course, I figured that out at the end. And I did make sure to fill the holes on both levels of my tray. I did neglect to mention that somewhere in here, I did take my candlestick outside and I spray painted it. This was actually the next day. And so I spray painted it with two coats of that Rust-Oleum 2X flat blossom white spray paint. And it looks just like the chalk paint, so that was good. And then I used my E6000 and my hot glue trick again, where I put a flat band of E6000 all around the bottom. And then I just kind of put dots of hot glue to hold it in place while the E6000 dried. Once my glue was applied, I attached the candlestick to the bottom center of the top tray. So I flipped the top tray over and glued the candlestick to the center of the top tray first. It's just easier, in my opinion, to glue it to the bottom of the top tray rather than try to center it without being able to see what you're doing. And then I applied both E6000 and hot glue to the bottom of that candlestick, and then I glued the whole thing to the center of the bottom tray. And the E6000 does not dry right away, but the hot glue does. So I had a few seconds of wiggle time, but really I was really trying to get it centered on the first try. And so you can see here I wiggled it just a little to make sure the angles were correct. And then I applied a bit of pressure just to make sure I got a good seal. And then I wiped away any excess glue that squeezed out. And here's the finished product. I love how it turned out, but the fun of a tiered tray is, of course, styling it. So here it is, all styled in my decor. I absolutely love how it turned out. And while I know it's not an exact duplicate of my inspiration trays, it definitely evokes the same sort of feeling in my decor. But mine only cost $10. I figure my frames were $1 a piece, the candlesticks were $1 a piece, and my beads all in total cost me about $6 for a total of $10. Not too shabby. And that's all that I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed seeing how I made this farmhouse 2-tiered tray for my home decor. I hope this inspires you to know that beautiful home decor does not have to cost a fortune. And until my next video, thanks for watching.